Hello, Stephen White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I watched The Trouble with Edward, and it was actually shockingly enjoyable. But there were indeed troubles with The Trouble with Edward. Um, the acting is actually good. The visuals are actually good. We open with a shot of the Enterprise um, warping in to meet up with a science vessel, and they're transferring their science officer to take command of that ship. She apparently has to go on a mission to try and help a planet that has a food source problem. And Captain Pike sees her off, and they have a nice chat. It's warm, it's funny, it's well acted. The transport room looks great. She beams on. We get another shot of the ships separating, and it looks good. She beams on. The ship looks good. The uniforms are interesting. There's a different uniform which has a more reasonable collar, not the folded over black one, and they had the same thing in blue on Discovery uniforms, and it just looks a bit odd. It seems like just extra hassle to put on instead of just having a zip or a plain collar or something. They've done away with that, and the science team, they have blue tops with the round neck. So it looks better. And it's more consistent with the uniforms that we saw in the cage, which had a smaller coloured collar, the same colour as the rest of the outfit. And I think these are the uniforms. They're saying these are the uniforms that we saw in the background in the last episode of season 1 of Discovery. But I think those were still different ones because they weren't. They may be the same colour and same basic style, but I don't think they are the exact same ones. They're more just like a top, just like they wore in the cage. But she encounters a problem with one scientist. He seems crazy. Um, he gets in his head that the trebles are edible and they'd be a good food source because he basically totally disregards any ethics so far as them being, are they sentient? Can we just take this species and just breed them for another race to eat? She brings that up. He is like, huh? And everyone is like, they know this guy's an idiot, and they very dismissive. And she basically moves into another department, and he resents it, and he simmers, and he just decides to genetically modify the triple so is born pregnant and reproduces at an incredible rate. The trebles are literally flying out of the trebles like gremlins, as Mecha Random pointed out. They think they're gremlins. Now, there's the main problem here is that it's already established in Star Trek 100 years before in Enterprise that the trebles reproduced prolifically and they were a biological problem. It does also establish that they're edible because Phlox was eating one. And what else, I guess, would you use them for? But it's quite possible that they are already born pregnant and produce at a fast rate, but he just made it extreme, like they're born with more babies and they, breed so much quicker. That would sort of, if he just, you know, um, enhance them, then that would be okay. But it sounds as though they weren't born pregnant at that point, or maybe he just doesn't mention it. So maybe we can assume they were born pregnant and he just sped it up and made it crazy. But I need to go back and listen to the dialogue because some people are saying this is a canon issue, and it wouldn't be an episode of Discovery without a canon issue. So it makes perfect sense, but that's not surprising. What's most surprising is I found it enjoyable. I actually liked the captain, Rosa Salazar. She's playing the captain, science officer who transfers to be the captain of the small little science vessel, and H. John Benjamin is playing the crazy scientist who at one point is standing in a hall when there's an emergency in the middle of the night. He just walks out into the hall in his underwear and his Starfleet top, and that's it. And they're not even like Starfleet underwear that like match like in Enterprise or something, which would at least would have been interesting design wise. Just like grey jocks, and it's not a pretty sight. So yes, he genetically modifies the trebles, and then the trebles are just shooting out of the other trebles, and it's kind of funny and freaky, um, and kind of stupid, but at the same time, he's just genetically modified this treble, and all the other trebles that are being born out of it are the same. So it's not like these are meant to be regular trebles just suddenly doing this. So they've changed the trebles, but they've done it plausibly with actually genetically modifying them. So, you know, it could be a canon issue, but I don't know. I have to go back. Does it establish that they weren't born pregnant? Because all we have to do is establish they're born pregnant, and the rate of how much they, breed depends on how much they eat. And if he wasn't feeding them, and if they were in an environment where they didn't have a lot of food, they wouldn't be breeding that quick. So it's kind of plausible that they were on another planet or something, and they weren't as prolific. But then he modifies these ones, and it gets crazy, and it's really crazy. They just are reproducing so quickly they cannot get rid of them, and they're using all the oxygen, and they're literally filling up the ship. They are getting into the circuitry and damaging things, and things are going offline. And eventually, the small crew has to abandon the ship because it's literally filling up with trebles. And this is the great part. You see shots of the ship from the outside, close-up shots, and the ship looks good. Still looks Discovery. It's too dark, but you actually see the trebles in the halls just filling up the windows, and that is brilliant. I do love the idea that they modified it. They made them crazy, and they made this extreme little small story. Um, but if they did it by contradicting the established canon, it's just why do they keep doing this? The reason they changed season three was supposedly so they wouldn't have this problem anymore. So could they not manage for one 12-minute short track to not contradict canon? I need to go back and work out if they did or not. People are saying they did, and I'm like, did they actually state they aren't born pregnant? The scientist says they're born pregnant, but if she hadn't dealt with them, she wouldn't have known that maybe they already were, and this is just an enhancement. So maybe that's their way of getting around it. It's not, yeah. So, but I did actually enjoy it. I found that funny. I liked the visuals, and she ends up because he dies. He stays on the ship because he complains about her because she moves him to a different department, and he complains to her after she complains about it after she transfers him because he disobeys an order and that, and she basically transfers him, and he does not like it. And there's a scene where she says, the end of the conversation, and he keeps wanting to argue because I guess he's crazy or is an entitled white man or something, but it did seem really harsh that she didn't really explain why or what the purpose of transferring him would be. He's just gonna be the same problem somewhere else. It's just like transferring a priest that molests children. He's just going to go somewhere else and molest someone. This guy's an idiot. He's just going to go somewhere else and be stupid. It didn't make a lot of sense, and it did seem a bit a bit unreasonable. She could have shown him a little bit more respect and actually explained. I mean, especially since he was asking, like she was just being, I'm the stern captain, and like there's times to play to be that, and other times when you kind of obviously he has issues with command and the command structure and everything, and he needs some guidance on some level where he may actually listen and benefit from it, as opposed to just like being punished essentially. Um, so that doesn't go well, and yeah, gets crazy, and he calls her dumb. He complains about her, says she's bad at her job, and calls her dumb. He seems really childish, and on the spectrum, sort of in a bad way. I'm not sure if he's on the spectrum, and this actually is a really bad depiction and stereotype of that, or if he's just stupid or so. It's hard to tell exactly. It's a 12-minute video, but so there are problems with this. I found it enjoyable to watch. I found the acting good, the visuals good. I laughed. I was like, oh my godding, and laughing, and even though the canon issues were there, I think I'm a bit numb to canon issues in Discovery, so it didn't bother me as much in the moment. Now I'm thinking about it, talking about it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's off. But then, yeah, he stays on the ship, basically. He doesn't... They're literally shooting trebles, because there's like a tidal wave of trebles coming down the corridor at them, and they have to get into a shuttle and abandon ship, basically. And he stands there saying, I'm not dumb, you call me dumb, I'm not dumb, you're stupid, sort of thing. And he's just a freak. And she just has to step into the shuttle and leave him there. And he gets knocked over by the wave of trebles and covered in them. So the trebles are not cannibal. They showed this one shot where it looked like the trebles were eating someone, and it looked just so ridiculous. Like they made them into like the Halloween treble, which had the teeth in the mouth that they did. Someone produced an official toy line. Um, Basically, he just enhanced the trebles to the point where they were replicating at an absolutely destructive level, and that was sort of entertaining as a story on its own. Now, supposedly, she had to answer to Starfleet later, and supposedly they blew the ship apart basically, or broke out of the ship and ended up traveling through space and getting onto a planet and getting into the Klingon sector. There's some suggestions that he Edward was wearing a black badge with a black top at one point, and that he's actually a member of Section 31. He might have been put there to sabotage the project or create the project to use against the Klingons, and that's why maybe it was classified and it's not something that's known later when Kirk and that sort of don't really know much about trebles when they are revealed in 10 years later, and that's in the original series. So that's another canon issue which can sort of be explained. Section 31 might have covered it up. Maybe they actually found some solution and modified the trebles back to what they were, or maybe to a middle ground where they were still prolific but not so insanely so. But at the end of the day, they go through the list of all the things that went wrong, all the things that happened. The ship was destroyed, the planets were infested, and a crew member was lost. And he said, "And you contribute this all to the acts of one crewman." He said, "How do you explain this?" She said, "He was an idiot." And it's actually funny. I laughed, and I was like, the director was really good. The director he took a problematic script with canon issues and just focused on the characters and the acting and the visuals, and it was really enjoyable. And I almost forgot about the canon issues and the problems. Now I'm reviewing it. I'm thinking about them, but it wasn't bad. I wouldn't actually mind watching this one again. In fact, I'm going to watch it again to check out some of the dialogue to see if things are stated or not, and the black badge, which I didn't actually spot. But either way, this is actually enjoyable. This is promising. It shows with different directors and different writers, you get different responses, and maybe someone could actually direct a good episode of Discovery that is actually enjoyable. I think it's almost happened a few times in season 2. I think the direction was good, but the writing was so frustrating it undermined the enjoyment of the episode, and that was usually the case with season 2. They tried, they didn't quite make it. Discovery, they were trying deliberately to mess with canon and fans. Season 2, they were trying to change the tone and improve it, and they kind of half got there. So I'm just going to leave it there. Watch it. It's funny. It's interesting. There are canon issues, but they might have been explained in the story if you look closely enough. I'm going to have another look. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. Feel free to like and subscribe, and if you have any opinions, let me know. It's fun to read comments. Thanks. Bye.